lot of things in history are timing, and it's very peculiar because in retrospect, people can look more brilliant or necessary than they actually were. So the fact that Bill Clinton faced George Bush, the first George Bush, in '92 was just the perfect moment for him in that sense. People were really bored with the Reagan era. They didn't like Bush. He was unpopular. And it was timing. W happened to have the good fortune of facing Al Gore in the year 2000, who, for all the virtues of Al Gore, and we love him, ran probably one of the worst campaigns, and he is not a good campaigner. In retrospect, it looked like W, Karl Rove, that great genius, was able to, do this electoral magic, but in fact, he happened to have the good luck to face two very weak candidates in Gore and in Kerry. Obama, I'm not saying Obama had luck, but the moment was totally right. People were just viscerally nauseated by W. They had enough of the wars, the incompetence, the Katrina, the secrecy. But what Obama did that was brilliant, and I talk about it in the 50th Law to a little extent, is he understood that the timing was right. And a normal person would have waited. I even thought he should have waited. I was wrong at the time. That it was too early for him. Nobody knew him. He had no record. He's a black man in America. What are you thinking? Give it some time. He understood that this was the moment. If he waited to 2012, that moment would have gone. Hillary would have won. She would have been in a position of power. He would have never had a chance. This was his moment. He opposed the Iraq War. He had momentum. And he ran a brilliant campaign. It's a question of obviously facing a very weak candidate in John McCain. I don't know who they would have put up who could have possibly posed a greater threat. But Obama was brilliant in how he saw that this was the one moment he had, and then he ran for a Democrat, because Democrats generally are pretty incompetent when it comes to running elections. I'm a Democrat myself, so I say that with a little bit of, I'm upset to hear that, but someone like John Kerry, typically Democrats don't understand strategy. They're always reacting to news events and tacking here and there, depending on what's happening. They have no sense of the larger picture. Obama was the first person in my lifetime, I can swear the first candidate in my lifetime, who I could say, this man understands strategy. He ran a brilliant campaign. A lot of it based on a consistent message, which is one thing I preach, which was his opposition to the war and change. Very well, marketing-wise, it was brilliant. This was the first man in my lifetime who I could compare to FDR or John F. Kennedy, two other brilliant campaigners in history. It's a little hard for me because I have a problem, which is I like him a lot. And I normally don't have this problem because I normally don't like politicians, so I can view them with some distance. So I'm giving that caveat that I have this problem. I'm not completely objective. He has run up against some things that he hadn't expected, which for somebody at his age, with his level of executive experience, which wasn't any, is going to encounter. So he's at a crossroads. He's a very intelligent man who's very capable of learning from experience. He's finding out what FDR discovered when he became president, that suddenly you're ruling over hundreds of people with their own agendas who come at you with their own little power bases and their own games, and it's chaos and it's madness. Now, FDR evolved a very brilliant way of handling it. He had also been governor of New York. He had some executive experience. It's not been even a year that Obama's been as president, and so I preach the idea of patience. Let us see how a man or a woman evolves over time in this position, because that's what shows how great a leader they are going to be. He's at a kind of a crossroads. If he becomes consumed by these pressures from outside, he could end up being a mediocre president. That is always possible. I have faith that he probably could go in the other direction. But an example would be Afghanistan. he inherited this situation. It wasn't his creation. And he inherited a military complex that's peopled with generals that he had nothing to do with, who bring in all kinds of pressures. It's an extremely complicated situation, and it's filled with all kinds of landmines. If he disregards what his generals are saying, it's going to start looking like the Democrat who's weak, who's against war, who doesn't understand hard political realities. The right will eat him up. And so he's between a rock and a hard place. And some of these generals that he's inherited are not very cooperative with him. I've heard from people that I know, I don't have a lot of connections, but I have some, that there is some friction from the old guard who were there in the Bush years. He's facing a very complicated problem in how to manage the military brass. I don't think people understand how difficult and chaotic and complicated it can be to be the President of the United States, inheriting what he has inherited in the year 2009. And so we're going to measure him in the next year. I say, give him another year. I'm kind of sick of all of these progressives who are just piling on him. Let's just see things. I don't think he's necessarily someone who's selling out, but it's possible. Let's give it some more time.